Thank you. My name is Dr. Jabera Matogoro. I work with the University of Dodoma as the lecturer. I'll be here to share my 14-year experience teaching at the higher learning institution. My specialization in telecommunication engineering, a technical survey, but also the one who embracing the soft skills, as was been mentioned since the morning. So as a university, we are titled with 3 core activities. One is teaching, academic, which is teaching, research, and consultants. As part of the consultants and academic as well as research, we are also engaging the community. So I will be happy to share the quadruple helix approach model, which has been engaging the community, government, private sector, as well as non-government organization. Thank you.
My name is Grace Vitalis Kinyunyu, a headmistress of IQEC Secondary School, found in Iringa region. I have the position as a chairperson of the Community Education Technology, EdTech, who working with RIRA in Africa so as to bridge a gap between the girls and the boys, I mean gender, for helping the student to come up with the technology using devices by providing the lab which help them, the computer lab, which help them to come up with a new technology by simplifying the work of learning and teaching. So as they go with the new technology by come up with a new technology and have the real world of technology, learning through seeing the things which is very important for them, not by only analog, by come up with the new technology. Thank you.
Good morning. I think Mwasi, yours was a tall order to explain what we do to a 5-year-old, so I'll give it a shot. My name is Iku Nyigulila, but you can call me Iku. I am co-founder and chief of operations at Shule Direct. So 10 years ago, we had a dream that we could do whatever that we could to make sure that every child in Tanzania has access to learning resources, qualified learning resources. So what we do in the education space, and they can access that through a mobile phone, a computer, a laptop, a tablet, or any device, digital device that they have. And
efficiently and understood by the teacher or by the education institution, it can be really powerful in shaping how we teach students. So for example, I think there's a big push now for working in groups and differentiated learning. So perhaps grouping people according to their ability or strengths or weaknesses. And if technology, so for example, engaging in an interactive learning platform, can produce data which would tell you, okay, this student is struggling with this thing, then it makes it much easier for the teacher to then group the children accordingly and teach them in a way that really targets the areas that they need to improve on. For us as the EdTech Hub, we try to incorporate kind of inclusivity into our work through our TCPD, so Teacher Professional Development Learning Management System, which is hosted by Tanzania Institute of Education and which we support. And the way that we do that is by trying to support the different learning styles. So for example, having video content, having written content, having audio content to support teachers, and then also by providing teacher professional development content specifically linked to delivering inclusive lessons.
I could take it next.
Okay, sure.
So I was going to say, I think when it comes to the different learning needs, the first part is about the awareness, understanding what are these learning needs. So technology can be used as a tool to solve the solutions, but so long as we know what are these issues. So one of the things that we're doing as Schule Direct, and we're in a consortium under the GPE Education Out Loud program, is trying to look at, first of all, we're looking at the gaps between policies and implementation when it comes to inclusive education. But then we've used our strengths as an organization in technology. We've created a tool where we can map out what are all the issues around the implementation when it comes to inclusive education, but also just being able to identify what are the different learning needs. So one of the challenges, or one of the things that's really coming out, is it's easy to identify learning needs which are visible. But then when it comes to actual learning challenges which are invisible, it's more complex. So looking at how we can use artificial intelligence, or how we can make technology more adaptive to the learner to make sure that it's truly inclusive, is one of the things that we're doing. So we're doing that with partners from Malawi and Kenya currently under the EOL, and the project is called Pamodzi. And the tool is accessible. Anyone who wants to look at that information can access it. And the idea, again, is to just provide that evidence even for the decision makers to understand what are the challenges and what exactly do they need to be addressing when it comes to inclusive education.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would like to contribute on, as the University of Dodoma, which is a very modern university, is the largest university in Eastern Central Africa. We are also advocating the use of artificial intelligence as a way to bridge challenges that we have already mentioned. So in this point, I should be able to share experience on what we have implemented on the personalized learning using artificial intelligence. It's one of the best approach to identify the needs of the learners and also put a strategy to implement the needs that has been identified using artificial intelligence to respond back on the learner's skills. So these take into account issues like maybe age, gender, and other factors that could have been identified using the artificial intelligence. So the University of Dodoma is currently implementing a 3-year project on artificial intelligence for development, which we are currently focusing on areas like energy, healthcare, agriculture, including to education. So I'll be happy to share more on what we are doing and currently the solutions that we have implemented to address the challenges that have been identified, including the personalized learning. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And before we get to you, Sandra, Mwalimu Grace, nilikuwa nataka kujua kwa mawazo yako wewe unavyoona teknolojia inaweza kutumikaje kwa wanafunzi wenye jinsi tofauti ya kujifunza.
Pardon your question?
So teknolojia inaweza kutumika kwa jinsi gani kwa wanafunzi wana mahitaji tofauti ya kujifunza?
Okay, teknolojia inaweza kusaidia kuwafanya watoto kwanza kuwa na confidence ya kutosha, kwa maana ya kwamba wanapotumia kompyuta zile katika kujifunza kwao wanapata vitu ambavyo moja kwa moja wanaviona, tofauti na vile wakitumia vitabu hawaoni, hakuna uhalisia. Lakini teknolojia imewaletea hali ile ya kufanya wapende kuwepo kule computer lab mara nyingi, kujifunza na kuendelea kuwepo shuleni badala ya kutoroka, especially watoto wa kiume. Na tunapofanya kazi na Laila in Africa, wamejitahidi kuweka kipaumbele kwa wasichana, kuwapa hostel, muda mwingi wanakuwepo shuleni. Kwa hiyo hata wale wa kiume hawatoroki, wanapenda kujifunza kule kwenye computer lab. Lakini Laila in Africa haijaacha kushirikisha wazazi katika contribution ya especially matengenezo ya vitu vinapokuwa haviendi sawa kule computer lab. Mfano vitu vimeharibika, labda mouse zile zimepotea, wazazi wana contribute kuwasaidia watoto waweze kuendelea kujifunza kuendana na teknolojia ya sasa. Lakini pia imehusisha community. Tunaposema community of practice, ya digital learning edtech community, digital learning ya practice, wazazi wamekuwa wakishirikishwa moja kwa moja katika kutoa mawazo, kudevelop skills on a computer, lakini pia kuimplement kile ambacho tunasema, lakini pia kuwaelewesha watoto, wazazi wale kwenye mikutano ya wazazi umuhimu wa kuendana na teknolojia ya 20th century ambayo inatutaka tuweze kulinki na mambo ya teknolojia. Kwa hivyo tunashukuru sana Laila of Africa, wamekuwa na nguvu kubwa ya kuweza kutuunganisha. Mfano, katika mkoa wetu wa Iringa wameweza kuprovide hizi computer lab kwa shule kama 9 ambayo tumejiwekea utaratibu wa kuweza kukutana pamoja, kushare idea, lakini kuweka ni namna gani tunaweza kumaintain ile hali ya watoto kujua wawezaje kuendana na teknolojia ya sasa, waweze kusoma kwa kisasa, watoto wale wa kijijini especially. Maana shule nyingi ambazo Laila in Africa wanafanya nazo kazi ziko interior. Kwa hiyo wameamua kutuunganisha pamoja, kutoa training mara kadhaa kwa wale watoto, kuwaleta labda pengine pamoja, kuweza kushare idea, kufanya integration ile on how wanaweza kuendana na ulimwengu huu wa sasa wa sayansi na teknolojia, ambapo serikali yenyewe imekuja na policy ambayo inatutaka tuweze kumove on kutoka kule kwenye analogi kuingia kwenye teknolojia. That's why wanaposema rethink on education system, tunataka kuachana na kule kizazi kile ambacho kilizaliwa kabla ya kompyuta kuwepo. Kwa hiyo hii inarahisisha moja kwa moja, sio kwa walimu tu, lakini pia hata kwa wanafunzi. Tunapokuwa tunaungana pamoja katika kutumia hizi teknolojia za kisasa, inatusaidia kuweza kuimprove even performance ya watoto. Especially mfano mimi shuleni kwangu, tangu nimeanza kufanya kazi na hawa Laila of Africa, walipotuwekea hii computer lab pamoja na kuweka hizo kompyuta, matokeo ya watoto darasani yamepanda kwa kiasi kikubwa sana. Especially matokeo ya mwaka jana, hatukuwa na division 0 hata moja. Watoto wameacha kutoroka, wanakuja shuleni, wanakaa pamoja, wanashare idea, lakini kwenye hizo computer lab hazijaachwa hivi. Kuna mambo haya ya shule direct, wametuwekea materials ambazo zinamfanya mwanafunzi aweze kupata kitu badala ya kwenda kucheza huko nje. Kila muda ukifika kule computer lab unakuta watoto wako busy na mwalimu yupo kule busy muda wote, ambaye pia Laila of Africa waliweza kutrain wale wale walimu ambao wanaweza kusimamia kompyuta. Kwa hiyo muda wote kunakuwa na mtu ambaye anawasimamia watoto kuweza kujisomea. Lakini hii imepelekea pia walimu kuweka materials mbalimbali kule, mfano maswali assignment, na kuwaassign watoto waende wakafanya hizo assignment kule computer lab. Na mwisho wa siku mwalimu inakuwa rahisi kwake kuja kumark zile assignment, kuwarudia watoto waweze kupata kitu ambacho kinawabadilisha kutoka katika ile hali ya kutojua ni namna gani ulimwengu wa sasa unakwenda au ni namna gani ulimwengu wa sasa unataka. Mfano, wanakutana na vitu ambavyo vinakwenda na wakati, material ambayo ni update, tofauti na ile wakati mwingine unakuta wana base kwenye old books ambazo wanakuwa hawaendani na teknolojia ya sasa. Hivyo tunashukuru sana Laila of Africa kuliona hili na kutujoin pamoja sisi, lakini na kushirikisha board members wa shule, kushirikisha wazazi, kushirikisha watoto ambao ni very poor kutoka vijijini kule, kuona kumbe na wao wanajaliwa na wanaweza kumove kutoka kwa one stage kwenda stage nyingine. Mtoto anapotoka katika shule za kijijini, anapokuja kupimwa, anapimwa sawa na mtoto ambaye yuko mjini, especially Dar es Salaam. Lakini sasa hawa wa huku mjini wanaweza kulinki na teknolojia kwa urahisi, tofauti na yule wa kijijini. Anapofika shuleni na kuiona ile kompyuta, ndio mara yake ya kwanza mwingine kuiona. Kwa hiyo hivyo tunawaelekeza sana, kwanza kutunza kile tulichonacho, lakini pia kukitumia kwa ufasaha. kwa sababu mle kuna materials ambazo ni nzuri na zinamfanya mtoto wakati wote awe bize na kujiona naye yuko update. Muda mwingi anakaa kule anajifunza, akishindwa basi anamfuata mwalimu, unakaa naye, mtoto hata mmoja mmoja unamuelekeza, hivyo anakuwa na morali ya kuendelea kujifunza, na mwisho wa siku tunapandisha performance na tunawanusuru watoto katika majanga mbalimbali, mfano ya ukatili. Badala ya kwenda kushinda polini, kwetu sisi kuna misitu sana. Kwa hiyo mtoto kama hana kitu cha kumvutia kukaa shuleni, basi wengine wanatoroka, wanakwenda huko polini, wanakwenda kutafuta kazi, especially za kupanga mbao, apate pesa ya haraka na kuacha shule. Kwa hiyo hapo EdTech technology imetusaidia pia kufanya watoto wapunguze ile dropout, kuacha shule na kuja shule wakati wote, lakini pia wanakuwa ni watoto ambao wanakwenda na sayansi na teknolojia ambayo sasa ulimwengu ndivyo ulivyo.
Asante sana.
Labda cha kuongezea tu kwa mwalimu, amechangia mada vizuri sana. Teknolojia sio suluhu pekee. Lazima tujue mahitaji ili tu. So we understand that technology does not offer the entire solution in terms of bridging educational gaps. But however, we see that technology can facilitate long life learning. For example, for myself, as a practitioner, but also as someone that is passionate about technology, I feel that with technology, first of all, you can use it anytime you want, learn at your own pace. You can do research, whereas in class setting, sometimes it doesn't offer that. So I think it's a yin-yang sort of a combination that can enable us to move the needle when it comes to ensuring that we are entering the fourth industrial revolution efficiently and effectively. Thanks.
Thanks. So in the sessions yesterday, and even in the question that we had early on today, there has been talk about 21st century skills. And Mwalimu Grace also mentioned it, as well as assessments. And my question here is, as digital learning becomes more prevalent, how do you strike a balance between standardized assessments and innovative project-based assessments that reflect real-world problem-solving skills? So maybe we'll start with Iku. This is around your area.
Yeah, that's a loaded question. So I think one of the things that technology we're seeing time and again is addressing the need for the 21st century skills. So for instance, what we see, and this we see everywhere we go in Tanzania, the minute you put a device to students, even if you said I'm going to give, there are 20 students, I'm going to give them 20 devices, what happens is automatically you'll find at least 2-3 students gravitating towards one device. So what that is helping those kids is learning collaboration, because at that point they have to communicate, they have to negotiate, they have to empathize with each other on how they're learning and how they're understanding and helping out each other. So automatically we are addressing some of the needs, some of those 21st century skills that are required. But when it comes to the assessment, now when you're talking about standardized assessments, I think if we are really to look into the fourth industrial revolution and what it really means and what it requires, I don't think there's a need for a standardized assessment to begin with. Because we're talking about where we cannot tell a child today what to become tomorrow, because even we don't know what kind of skill or what kind of professional we'll need tomorrow. We understand, yes, we'll need the doctors, we'll need to eat, we'll need to commute, but then we're seeing how technology is advancing very fast. So we really can't say today, I want you to become a trash architect. That's the thing, right? But we do need somebody to do that. So what we can only emphasize with our education is to make sure that children are learning how to learn, they're learning how to cope with whatever environment they're in. They're learning to adapt, and they're empathetic enough to care about the challenges around them so that they can be constantly and continuously solving challenges around them. And that's how we're becoming innovative. But honestly, today, I can't say there's a way that we can test that. We can assess that it should be one test that everybody does, and we can be sure that now they can do this. So when it comes to the assessments, I understand in Tanzania, we're trying with multiple ways. Like right now, we've introduced the oral examination. So again, we can test the competence when it comes to the communication, articulation, critical thinking, and creative thinking skills. But in the long run, I think this is something that we're taking on as how do we correctly assess and what exactly are we assessing? Because every individual will have a different potential. So what exactly can we say is a standardized test to assess all these potentials?
Thank you. And Dr. Matogoro, I'd love to get your thoughts on that, but I'm adding another question on top of that. How can digital learning be leveraged to bridge the gap between theoretical knowledge imparted in university settings and the practical skills required in the professional world?
Thank you so much, Mas. And maybe to respond on the questions, I was very excited on the conversation that we had yesterday, and especially from my professor, Maboko, who was sharing issues that has been included in the new curriculum. And to be honest, as an education expert, I also participated sharing my personal experience and input when the reviewing is going on in Dodoma. And I was excited to see for the first time 21st centuries are being included as a core skills that is required by students. Issue like collaborations, issue like negotiations, problem solving, critical thinking, but also the issue of digital savvy. So I think these are the issues which are very relevant at the first 20th century. And as the university, sharing my 14 years experience being within the largest university in Africa, actually in East and Central Africa, the University of Dodoma. So what we are trying to do, 2007, we noted that we are receiving a huge number of students, and then what we designed is to have first-year students staying within the campus and bringing experts to interact with those students, where students can be given technical skills as well as the practical skills. And another approach which we are, I could also share as part of my research, which I've been doing in Kondoa and the other areas, is trying to use practical solutions to solve real problems. You know, it's quite easy in nowadays. You find maybe an innovator staying in a room, try to imagine the problem in a rural area, and at the same time, the same person who is trying to create his own or her own problem, trying to come up with the solutions. We should all agree that there are no solution that can fit all. So that's why we are saying human-centered design approach is the best approach to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mwalimu Grace, pia ningependa kupata mawazo yako. Jinsi gani digital learning inaweza bring together, kutofautisha, kujifunza darasani na kinachotakiwa kikazi. Sasa tukatumia vipi digital learning kuweza kufanya hivyo?
The question again?
Yes, how can we use digital learning to bridge the gap between what we're learning in class, which is theoretical, and what we need in terms of work, in the workplace?
It simplifies the work of teaching as a teacher using digital tools to help the student, and especially by using tools like PowerPoint, using videos, helping the student in a class session, something like that.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to move to this side. We've been a bit quiet. So Vodacom. As a representative of Vodacom Tanzania Foundation, I would love to learn more about how you guys are contributing to the digital transformation of education. What are the kind of initiatives that you guys have been doing, especially in terms of fostering inclusive learning?
So at Vodacom, since the inception of the foundation in 2006, we have been playing in this space of technology and basically digital learning. We first started with, and at the time we had no strategy whatsoever, but we knew we wanted to contribute to the education sector. So we had started with providing schools here in Dar es Salaam with computers. Then the program was called Smart Classes. And then we moved on and we deliberated and we came up with a full-fledged strategy that addressed education, health, and other areas. So with that, we thought that it was a critical time, and this was in 2015, by the way, that we needed to design a program that is fully fledged technology that can be delivered via a mobile phone. And we came up with the IFAHAM program. At the time, it was called Instant School. So we activated the program in 2017, and our target was to reach learners and teachers, but also parents. And our role was to ensure that our network, given that Vodacom has well, currently almost 18 million subscribers in the country. So we felt that it was necessary for us to come up with a solution that is that has a local mindset to it in terms of what are the gaps, for example, in terms of phone penetration, mobile phone penetration, the level of education in the country. Do teachers have actually ICT skills? Where is ICT implemented the most? So that's how we really came up with IFAHAM. It's a web-based portal, like just any other. But what we did was to zero-rate it end to end. We also made sure that all the contents that are curated on the portal are optimized so that anyone can access content via a feature phone. So IFAHAMU is our e-learning program. It is zero-rated. It is hosted on the Vodacom platform. But we also make sure that we reach out to communities in terms of schools, government stakeholders, and the technocrats. So we collaborate with those key parties during implementation, because we are aware that it's one thing to have a portal that is, in the air, but you need to make sure that it actually reaches its intended beneficiaries. So we also do a lot of marketing on-ground activations. We also ensure that we provide trainings, and we work with other development partners, the likes of African Child Projects, IQEC, and since its activation, we've also complemented the program with provision of ICT equipment, because we understand not all schools in Tanzania have ICT labs. So what we look at is, where is our mobile infrastructure? Where has it penetrated? What are the school conditions? And if the schools, primarily which are government schools, have that ready mindset to adopt ICT as a lesson, then we intervene. So primarily you would find us that we are working with secondary schools and the teachers. So in short, basically we are offering e-learning platform to bridge educational gaps. I must say that we are glad that we can see that e-learning platforms, of course, complemented by provision of ICT equipment, does impact school performance. Last year, our financial year 2022, we were able to conduct an evaluation that showcased that at least 3% out of 5% students were actually able to increase their performance just by ensuring that we are setting up a full-fledged ICT lab, meaning it has the right furniture, the desktops, computers, with tablets at times. Of course, content is provided by Ifahamu. And the content is really, it has rather both local and international content. So anyone really can use the IFAM platform, but also we give them TV screens in place of whiteboards or blackboards so that the teacher can fully utilize ICT in delivering lessons. So yeah, basically that's how we are doing it. But we also have made it possible internally within Vodacom to ensure that even our data bundles are customized to respond to the needs of the schools. Not all schools can afford data bundles, so internet connectivity is quite key. So you need to have your infrastructure, your network infrastructure, make sure that you have your 3G, 4G, where now you can deliver your IFAHAM solution, so to speak, but you also need to make leeway in accordance to our environment in Tanzania to enable schools to also afford internet connectivity, because they go hand in hand. And it also gives, especially the teachers, time to also catch up with their own learning needs. Yeah, so basically that's how we deliver when it comes to bridging digital skills and transformation.
Thank you. And shamelessly, I will be coming to look for you afterwards and see if we can get our content on your platform. Shamelessly. One of the things that we have seen is that there's been a lot of conversations about partners, stakeholders. Hannah, I'd love to hear from you. From your perspective, how can collaboration between the public and private sectors be strengthened to create a more cohesive and sustainable digital learning ecosystem in Tanzania?
Thanks, Marcy. So I think one of the key things is understanding where our respective strengths and weaknesses lie. So, you know, if you take, for example, some government institutions, let's take the government institutions focused on education. Education is their area of expertise. Now, it's not reasonable by any means to expect that they can do absolutely everything, right? Even in terms of printing textbooks, they're not printing them right there because they're not a printing factory. They go elsewhere to print the textbooks, but they have the expertise in creating those textbooks. So I think one of the first things is to understand, like, what expertise do public services already have, and where are the gaps that private stakeholders could contribute to. I think the private sector brings a lot in terms of innovation because they have a lot more flexibility and time to take this human-centered approach. So in terms of developing tech-based innovations that really work, there's a lot of scope for that to come from the private sector. And then the public sector has a choice. They can either purchase from the private sector, or at the least they can learn from the private sector. So what is working? What evidence is there that these platforms are effective for supporting student learning outcomes? What is the evidence for saying that, you know, even if it's certain YouTube channels that are really popular with teachers, okay, why are these so popular? What can we make that is similar to this so that teachers will be attracted to our content and our content will be equally as effective? So I think, you know, there's two options there. One is to have established partnerships where public and private stakeholders come together towards a common goal. And the second is to acknowledge that the private sector can often excel at a faster pace because it doesn't necessarily have the same constraints as public services do. And so then looking to the private sector to see what kind of key takeaways there are that could be then integrated into public sector.
Yes, I think what I wanted to share in the introductory section, I mentioned about the quadruple helix model, which is sharing on the engagement of the academia, government, industry, as well as the CSO, NGO, non-for-profit organizations. But to emphasize what Hannah's mentioned, we should be fair that this partnership need to be in a win-win situation. It's not like you are just opening hands and expecting to receive while you are not giving out. So I think that's what brings a smart partnership, and that's what the University of Dodoma and many other government institutions are emphasizing. So maybe from my experience of my teaching at the higher learning institution, as I mentioned, the University of Dodoma, even in the previous panel, there was a discussion, how do we make sure we have the curriculums which are updated and maybe responding to the industry demand. So when we're designing the curriculum, we introduced a course called selected topics, where it's like an open topic where a lecturer could find or an expert could come in and fill out the gap. So in that way, you find it's quite easy to respond on the demand of the industry. So I think that's what we are currently doing at the university, and possibly many other universities might have other approaches. But on the same note, on the smart partnership, the University of Dodoma is also working with many other partners. Like as I mentioned, the Artificial Intelligence for Development Research Lab we are doing is currently being supported by CEDA and IDRC. So all of these is because industry sees some potential within higher learning institutions. And in that way, we could work toward leveraging digital technology toward the transformative power that we are all intending for. Maybe together with what we have been saying, you know, when you attend panelists like this, you seem like maybe people know the solutions, but why do we still have problems? When you hear people saying from the yesterday in the morning session, you feel like people know the solution, but why do we still have the problem? So I think even this in this gathering, if you mention, like we are saying, a digital transformation is not a one-man show. But maybe in the house, maybe with your permission, moderator,
Absolutely.
You could ask, how many people are paying for electricity for their house? Maybe you can raise hand. Water bills. How many are paying for the internet for their kids in this room? Very few hands. Why? They are saying internet digitization is the government role, which is wrong. If you have a computer at home, if you have an internet at home, you're empowering girls. You're empowering people with special needs who are staying at home. You know, these people are not staying at school. They are staying at home. So I think as a call for action, digitization and the 21st century skills is not a one-man show. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Actually, following up on what you're saying, I would love to hear from the panel, what are actually things that we can do that are practical, we can implement, and we can say, you know what, this is something that we can do and actually achieve these goals. So I'll start off. Who would like to take that one? I see Iku going for the mic there.
Hello? Oh, great. So I think just to also add on to the previous question, the goal, like the education goal, is for all of us. It's not just for the government, it's not for the private sector. And I really love the fact that we had the previous panel also calling in the employers, because there's a linkage. Whatever the education outcomes, they affect all of us. So I think the collaboration has to be there, and it's high time we stop thinking a them and us situation where it's them collaborating with us and us collaborating with them. But it's all of us making sure that we're achieving this goal. So for Schule Direct itself, I think one of the things that if you're able to present the evidence of what's working, it's easy to get people to come on board. So we've been doing that for years, and currently we have an official agreement with TAMISEMI, the Regional Administration Local Government Authority. That partnership is for e-learning. As of last year, as we know, all teachers in Tanzania received a tablet after the census. So with that, they have the school information system from TAMISEMI, and in that, there is an e-learning component, which is the Schule Direct platform. But more than that, what I can say, what we can do, and this has been the strategy, I could say, from Schule Direct, because we're building a platform. We're not just saying we are going to create content and we're going to solve the education challenges in Tanzania. But what we are doing is we've created a platform. We want anyone and everyone who has content for young people that is going to help them, that's going to help them realize their potential. They can use the platform. So one of the first things that we can do is say, how do we create technology that's open and accessible for everyone to use, so long as we are intending to achieve the same goal. So that's, I would say, a quick win that we can do. And also just a shout out to Vodacom, because they agreed to zero-rate Schule Direct platform, especially after COVID happened. So if we can have more such collaborations, and we've done that with a couple of other mobile network operators in the country. So just looking at, everyone can look at what's the first thing that they can do. There's always a quick fix that they can do, and that can be more practical in terms of how do we move tomorrow.
And Grace?
Pia mawazo yangu, tunapokwenda katika ulimwengu wa kuhama kutoka katika mapinduzi ya viwanda kwa awamu ya 4, nafikiria ilikuwa ni vizuri sana tutumie njia shirikishi ya kutoa elimu kwa wazazi zaidi wapate uelewa juu ya namna gani tupo katika kipindi ambacho tunataka kushifti kutoka katika elimu ambayo ilikuwa hatujabezi sana katika teknolojia. Sasa kwa sababu tunakwenda kwa ulimwengu wa teknolojia, tukiwaachia hawa wadau peke yao wanaotuletea labda vifaa kwa ajili ya kufundishia kuendana na teknolojia, haitasaidia. Kama mzazi haelewi, anaweza kumkataza mtoto kuingia huko kompyuta, akasema mtajifunza labda mambo mabaya, labda italeta madhara kwenye jamii. Hata kama itakuwa imeshakuwa protected, kwamba kule kumewekwa vitu ambavyo ni vizuri tu vinamsaidia mtoto, basi kuna haja ya kuendelea kutoa elimu kwenye mikutano ya hadhara, lakini pia kwenye vikao vya wazazi, na kuendelea kuelimisha wanafunzi wajue umuhimu wa matumizi ya hii teknolojia. Lakini ukiacha hiyo, kuendelea kutoa elimu kwa walimu, hawapendi pia wengine kujihusisha sana na kutumia teknolojia kwa sababu ya uvivu tu wa kutaka kujifunza. Kwa hiyo tunapokuwa tunasaini kazi mbalimbali, kutoa ripoti za wanafunzi, kutunza rekodi mbalimbali, basi tuendelee kupeana elimu ili iweze kutusaidia sasa kuendana na ulimwengu wa teknolojia kwa awamu ya 4.
Maybe Mwas, I think it could not be fair to end up without mentioning a very big transformation that the government of Tanzania is doing, especially in higher learning institution. I hope many of us have heard what we call Higher Education for Economic Transformation Project, which is a World Bank funded project, which is being implemented in a higher learning institution. And this project is currently trying to transform on how universities and higher learning institutions are doing, especially to align the skill sets with the industry demands. So I think in such kind of initiative, you see the government of Tanzania is recognizing the vital role of the private sector and many other development partners to support addressing the critical challenge we are currently discussing. Maybe as also sharing my personal experience is that, yes, we have mentioned many issues, but access to devices still a challenge. You can imagine the cost of buying 20 tablets or 20 computers to a school. It's not that much easy. And you imagine schools do not have economic generating activities to sustain. But what a normal, something that we are currently implementing at the University of Dodoma with the support of UNICEF and many other partners is to come up with an approach which try to engage community. We are establishing digital community centers, maybe we call so economical digital centers, which in a way communities can fundraise fund to subsidize the school connectivity. Because we have seen in most cases private sector could subsidize the capex, but the OPEX remains an issue to most of the schools, where you find maybe a computer donated in 1 year cannot work for 10 years. So do we have a strategy? What we are trying to advocate as the University of Dodoma, actually as a learning institution, is to come up with the community engagement and come up with a way where communities are engaged to subsidize the school connectivity. In that way, we could end up with having a sustainable school connectivity approach. Thank you.
Thank you. So I know the audience has some questions. We're going to move into it. So maybe in closing, and I'm going to do a shameless plug in here, Ubongo, we're really big on storytelling. So I would love, as part of your call to action, to give us one story based on your experience that we will not forget about digital learning. Yeah, go.
So what I would say is I think the approach to digital learning should be incremental. The solution is not doing everything all at once. And I think it's excellent that Vodacom, Schule Direct, and others are working towards making content accessible offline, because if you are going to a rural school like Grace's school in Iringa, and teachers and students alike don't have experience using technology on a regular basis, and then you bring interactive digital content and the hardware itself, so figuring out how to turn on the computer, how to turn it off, how to store it, how to protect it. And then you're also adding the internet on top of that, not to mention questions of digital safety, your digital footprint, how do you stay safe online? If you do all of that, you're unlikely to be successful in any of those things. And the story I would bring is that, I've grown up with technology. I remember our first computer. I remember when the internet came to my house. I remember not being allowed to use it very often. I remember when we got Wi-Fi. And because I've had the luxury and the privilege of that experience, I've been able throughout my life to acquire these different digital skills. And so I would really advocate for an approach that says, let's do one step and let's get that step right. When people are gaining confidence in that and we can see that we have the infrastructure and the capacity to support it, then let's move to the next step.
Yeah, for me, in closing, I think digital transformation as a whole, it's an open-ended journey. However, in order for us to realize our goal, we really need to collaborate to ensure that we have that sustenance at the end of the day and leverage each other's strength and resources. Partnerships are extremely key. At Vodacom, that's what we rely on. It's one thing to have technology, but you need to have other stakeholders that have the right skills, have the connection with the communities, also can inform the program even further, for example, for eFaham. So I believe that partnerships are key and can enable us to move the needle faster than we think. In terms of storytelling, I'm not shying away so far from you, Hannah. I remember the first time I got into a computer lab, I was doing my ordinary level, and the first lesson was how to really turn on the computer. So it's extremely key that we introduce technology to our children as soon as possible, provided that we consider all the ethical things are in place. So basically, that is my story. I think technology is essential. It can take us further beyond our own measures. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You know, Mwasi, I come from a village where to make a Skype call, you need to travel 20 kilometers to find a strong signal. And I was first interacted with the computer when I joined the University of Dar es Salaam for my Bachelor of Science in Computer Science. I'm such kind of a person. And I advocate rural connectivity because I know what it takes for rural to get digital access. Thank you.
Mapinduzi ya teknolojia ni nzuri sana kuanzia kwenye level za chini za shule, mfano sekondari. Mfano halisi ambao mimi nimesoma katika shule za vijijini pia, lakini kompyuta kwa mara ya kwanza nimeiona nilipofika chuo kikuu. Nilipofika shuleni naiona kama TV, lakini ndio kompyuta. Na kwa sasa imekuwa ni kitu kizuri sana kwa sababu kwa watoto wetu mashuleni kuona zile kompyuta na kushika, kuwasha, kujifunza. Anapoona mfano kwenye somo la geography, unamfundisha mfano agriculture, large scale agriculture, small scale agriculture, ile tofauti anaiona live. Inampa hamasa mtoto kuweza kujua kwamba aha, kwa hiyo mwalimu anaposema large scale agriculture maana yake wanatumia mashine, matrekta kufanya kazi. Anapopanda anaona zile plantation wanatumia mashine, kitu ambacho kiuhalisia kwa watoto wa vijijini hakikuwa ni kitu cha kawaida. Lakini pia hata wanapofundisha masomo ya biology na kadhalika, pia inasaidia sana kufanya shule kuwa rafiki kwa watoto. Kwa hiyo hata akitoka hapo, anapokwenda university level, anapokwenda A level, anapoona hivyo vitu vinakuwa kwake sio vitu vya ajabu tena. Anakuta ni vitu vya kawaida na vinakuwa vimeshamsaidia sana kumove kutoka katika level moja kwenda kwenye level nyingine, kuliko avikute tu kwenye level ya juu ya chuo kikuu ambapo kuna mchanganyiko wa wanafunzi kutoka sehemu mbalimbali, wale wa vijijini waliosoma English medium, waliosoma zile local schools, mfano hizo shule zetu za kata, wanaenda kuwa kitu kimoja. Kwa hiyo ni vizuri sasa kwa kupitia hii mapinduzi ya kiteknolojia iweze kuwasaidia watoto hawa kuwa update tangu wakiwa hivi wadogo. Wanapopanda basi wanakuwa competent, wanakuwa wazuri sana katika kwenda kuvitendea kazi hivi vitu. Hata wakiamua kuspecialize labda katika mambo ya computer ICT, mambo ya ICT ya computer science na nini, wanakuwa wako vizuri sana ukikompare na ile kwamba akaikute kule kule ndio aanze kuspecialize.
Okay, so I'll share just stories from perspective of our users, and I'll leave it to you to figure out the moral of the story. So one of my favorite stories, and there are many, I went to a village called Ranch. It's in Arusha. It's on the highway from Arusha to Namanga. So it's maybe 5 minutes from the main road. But as soon as you get into this village, sorry, there's no electricity. They have to, like, sorry, they take the phones and they will give them to one person to take them into town to charge them. So we went to this village. The idea was we worked with Microsoft from Ireland. They donated tablets and we asked them if we can put content on that. And when we got to the village, it was so interesting. The first thing was we were to meet women and young girls, but we first met the men. So what they told us was the men had to see what it is we want to show their women. If they approve it, then the women will come. So we did that, and then the women came. And what really touched me, there was this one young girl who kept looking at the tablet, because what we normally do is we believe we create a platform that's so easy to use even for a first-time user. So whenever we go and interact with users, we don't start instructing them. We just give them the device and tell them do whatever you want to do with it. So she started crying, and I was curious. I was like, what happened? And she said she was married. I didn't know. She was 16. She was married. She had to drop out of school, and she was in Form 2 when she dropped out of school. And when she saw the content, it just gave her this hope, that suddenly she could, learn all the subjects that she loved. And she was telling me there, she was like, I really love geography. And that's the thing she went to straight. So that's one of my favorite stories. Another one was a message, and unfortunately I left my phone over there. There's a lady who sent us a message. It was a text message in Swahili, but what she said, I'm just paraphrasing, was she's a lady who works at the market, and she wrote to thank Shule Direct because her child could access learning content at home from her phone, and she couldn't afford to take her to after-school classes. So that was my second one. Then my third one was, earlier this year we lost an employee. Sorry, not that we lost that they died, but we lost that they left the organization. They left the organization to go for further studies in computer engineering. This kid was, for me, it's a testament again of what we've been doing. So in 2016, we met this kid when he was a secondary school student at Azania Secondary School, when we were launching our SMS platform. And we had asked the students to be the ones to demonstrate to people how this platform works. And he was one of those kids. But then what he came to tell us later on was that day sparked an interest for him in technology. So he went, after that, he went to DIT. He did his first degree at DIT, and he came to work with us. And he made the amazing Shule Direct Kids mobile application that's accessible. I would encourage all of us to download it. That's for the primary schools. So now he left to do his master's in computer engineering. So that's my third story. And as I said, I'll leave you to figure out what the moral of these stories is. And I'm happy to chat with you during lunch. You can share with me what is the moral of these stories. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Guys, a big round of applause for the amazing panel. Unfortunately, due to time, we will be unable to take questions, but as Iko mentioned, they'll be available during the lunch break, and you can ask any questions there. Apologies. Thank you. Thank you guys once again.
Stand up for a group picture. Let's clap for them. You cannot have a cake and eat it. They decided to spend most of the time disseminating content and knowledge and not giving us time to guide them onto what we needed to hear from them. So well done, congratulations. That look, Madam Moderator, that look. That looks, that speaks volume. So let's put our hands together for them, please. Thank you so much. Now we're to break into 2 sessions. Unfortunately, that ain't happening, so we're going to go back to back. The first session is going to look onto education financing, reducing the debt burden to allocate more funds to education. And after this will be followed by addressing early marriage and teenage pregnancy, implementing measures to prevent early marriages and teenage pregnancies to reduce school dropout rates for girls. I thought you wanted me to celebrate you more. Of course I celebrate you. Well done, well done. Thank you, Sandra. Distinguished participants, I have the pleasure to now bring to the stage Semkai Kilonzo, ED Policy Forum, for this very important, very, very important discussion, education financing. Okay? Many has been spoken, including, I remember that young girl ambassador yesterday who said, where is your commitment? 20%. I guess this is what is going to be unveiled on this session. You have an hour, which we've already spent 5 minutes of your time. Thank you. Thank you. All right, thank you, Austin. Yeah, it's an honor to be taking this stage as the moderator this afternoon. The panel for the discussion is on education financing or financing for education. First of all, as I was introduced, I'm Semkai Kilonzo from the ED of the Executive Director of the Policy Forum, but I'm here representing the Kuyenda Collective,
which is a project on strengthening education systems to deal with the learning crisis in countries such as Zimbabwe, Malawi, Tanzania, and Mozambique. As you've heard of us in the last 2 days being introduced, we are part of the Education Out Loud program on education. So without further ado, I would like to call to the stage Dr. Elisha IQEC of the Department of Research, Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education from Zimbabwe. Yes, our big round of applause to Dr. IQEC from Zimbabwe. We were to have the Director of Policy and Planning from the Tanzanian Ministry of Education, Science and Technology. He was actually in the room, but he popped up to head to a very important meeting. He might be joining us if he's in time. I believe online we were supposed to have David Archer, the head of programs at ActionAid. I don't know whether we've actually been able to connect with him, but people responsible for the technology will let us know. So, but anyway, without further ado, I'd just like to give a little bit of context regarding our topic today before I invite Dr. IQEC to start us off. A lot of our countries in the region, not just south of the Sahara, but more specifically East African countries, but those are also within the Southern African Development Community, have a huge debt burden. And because of this burden, it is believed they do find it very difficult to get the resources to pump into a really crucial sector like education. And this also obviously involves other key sectors as well, like health, agriculture, water, and so forth. But for the purpose of today's discussion, we'll be trying to zoom in and look deeper into the education sector and the lack of financing, or the challenges of financing towards the sector, and trying to look at it from the lens of the debt burden. But also, it is also important not just to look at the debt burden, but the challenge that we have within the African continent of the illicit financial flows that leave our continent and also contribute to the shortage of funds to invest in key sectors. So, Dr. Elisha, to start off, I'd like to ask the question, with your experience in the Zimbabwe domain, but also, beyond that, within the Southern African Development Community, what would you say is the depth of this debt burden in relation to the lack of financing towards education?
Okay. Good afternoon to you all. I don't know how to say it in Swahili. What should I say? Mambo Gidi. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity, TenMet, and everyone else, to share with you some little bit of experiences. We're not trying to say that we are experts within the various areas, but we are saying if we share our experiences as a country, definitely we will help each other. Basically, before I give a quick response to my facilitator, Zimbabwe has got 10 provinces. Zimbabwe has got 72 districts where we find the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education. And within that context, I am partly a senior lecturer in various universities, as well as a principal education researcher. And within that context, we are saying all resources made available to education, be they human, material, physical, information, the most critical resource is the financial resource. But in order for us to answer the question of debt burden, one thing that is more important is that we need to have data. What type of data should be made available? In most cases, for example, in Zimbabwe, we collect it through our ED46 questionnaires, which give rise to EMIS records education management information systems. And I wouldn't delve much into the financing component or thinking about it without most probably trying to ventilate and give respect to this tool, which collects data on enrollments, on infrastructure, on examination, on dropouts, on all aspects which affect the demographic trends in a country or in a group of people. This is the type of data which is then now used to come up with perfect decisions. The presentations which were made yesterday were quite illuminating, especially when we want to look at various players in provision of education. And just recently, people were talking about digitization and its role in providing systems. In education, I will come back to your point on financing education, but basically we would actually see that there are disparities in educational provision where we need infrastructure to be financed. Remember about the 20%, which is supposed to be a universal percentage variable. We need to train teachers, and the salaries of teachers tend to gobble the budgets from most of our African countries. It is a result of our population. At times, I think I would be proud to say Zimbabwe, in terms of literacy rate, is above 90%. But apart from that, it also creates another challenge, unemployment. Therefore, when we are now looking back and we say, okay, we have our teachers whom we have trained, we also have issues of inclusivity. Does the money that we have cover for disabled children? Does the money manage to build the classrooms we have collected data for? Does the very same money assist in the supervision and monitoring educational activities? Does it also give us opportunity to measure and assess the teaching and learning process through examinations and other assessment criteria? And recently, about 10, 15 minutes ago, people were talking of the migration into the digital area, where we are saying, can we spring up and have our education improved through the digitization process? I would have asked the question and said, it seems Africa is sitting on high finances. We tend to use hydropower, and yet we've got the abundant energy in our solar system, which will definitely migrate to any remote rural area. So now coming back to your question about the date and its impact. Definitely, most of the countries in Africa, they seem to have problems, and Zimbabwe included, that the developmental stages or economic development strategies are not all that very smart. We have got the natural resources, but we tend to send them out of our countries in their raw states with very little beneficiation and value addition. What does that mean? It means there is little return which comes to our country. And in most cases, our industrial areas have not been so much revolutionized to the extent that it can produce all what we want. What then does that mean? It means we have got to borrow monies to sustain even our social operations, and then that becomes a very difficult scenario. If we were to borrow for industrial and economic growth in our industry, in our agriculture, it will to some extent bring some certain returns. But now as we borrow for consumption, it becomes a serious burden on the taxpayer, because all these countries which borrow, they have got to pay back, and you can pay back with a cost. This cost will make it very difficult for you as a country to invest. And if you fail to invest, it means there is economic stagnation in the country. What does that also mean? It means that various opportunities of growth affect even the cycle of employment, the vicious cycle of our vulnerable learners and even adults. They can now fail to attain these two attributes of educational system, access and quality. Again, you'll also find that the issue of debt is very critical in trying to improve the lifelong and households in the country. The health delivery system is also affected. If the health delivery system is affected, it will also have a negative impact on our educational system. What does that mean? We have high dropout rates. We have to continuously have early marriages merely because of the poverty which is part of us. And right now we can actually attribute in Zimbabwe that we might be having a very serious drought. When we came from Harare, it was as hot. We only felt some little bit of showers when we arrived here in Dar es Salaam. And we expect that there shouldn't be any cyclone in Zimbabwe. Because this cyclone, if I can refer you to Cyclone Idai and education, it destroyed the little infrastructure which was available, merely because the capacity to build that infrastructure using quality material can be compromised because of the little monies available. If we go back again to the national budget, when it is actually distributed from the central government, it is thinly spread. And most people who deal with money, they'll tell you that, okay, you've got 10 billion, for example, Zimbabwe has got some bit of hyperinflation. They'll say it's 20 trillion. But if you look at the quarters of the year in which that money is supposed to be distributed for goods and services, we might come to the end of year before certain monies have actually been attributed for use. And this affects the quality and delivery of all the goods and services in a country. And as I have earlier said and reiterate, this budget caters for quite a number of salaries. For example, in Zimbabwe, we've got at least about 10,500 primary and secondary schools, catering for a universal 16 million, the overall population. But in terms of the school-going learners, we're talking in terms of 3 to 4 million people who are actually supposed to be using those resources, the 10,500 schools, which are highly inadequate. What does this debt burden again do to us? We train teachers using taxpayers' monies, but we don't employ them. Recently, some of our teachers have actually been engaged in Rwanda. Are there any people from Rwanda here? Any people from Rwanda? Oh, thank you. You have our people there, our teachers. Yes, so you can actually find that. That is one other area which can actually be used by any nation to use its labor force or access labor force to generate more monies by sending them to other countries. I heard yesterday here that Tanzania was actually asking teachers from other countries, and His Excellency was even also talking about the incremental stage in which education, access, and quality was being implemented. But I just like the scenario that there is a deliberate effort to increase infrastructure. When he made the illustration that, let's stop making classrooms until we train teachers and so on and so forth. But basically, the issue of debt really bedevils all developmental activities in a country. I think I've tried to touch some little bit of corners. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a catch-22, I must say. I mean, as I was discussing it informally with the Director of Policy and Planning, he did remind me that although we do complain about the debt burden and how it impacts us in terms of financing for education, it's that some of the debt that we incurred is because we took loans to actually finance education. So we're in debt because we were in the quest and the desire to finance for education. So it's a bit of a catch-22. So maybe, if I may ask you, in your experience, would you have ideas? Because as laymen, I'm sure that many are asking themselves, how do we disengage? How do we escape this vicious cycle?
Thank you very much. One very important thing that a nation can do is to improve its economic activities. For example, in Zimbabwe, what is actually happening is that there is a piece of legislation which now says all schools are commercial entities. This takes off from tech-voc or vocational and technical institutions, but there's now a green light that schools can actually even make uniforms, sell, do a lot of other industrial activities. And I think some people were talking about industrial attachment. This is one way of trying to limit the expenses from the taxpayers' monies. Another way in which the government is trying to engage merely because of the debt is in school governance. It has engaged parents so much that they become the front runners in mobilizing research and, okay, thank you. And even a question of sustaining educational activities through projects. These types of projects, some of them, the government might actually give some little bit of seed money, so much that they can sustain the activities. But all in all, what we are saying is that, for example, from a Zimbabwean perspective, we've got government schools, non-government schools, and private schools. So you find there are disparities in terms of resources which are available within that particular area. Private schools are well resourced, and you'll even find that one way the government has tried to look into it is to give a deliberate process of allowing private individuals to build schools. Because currently in Zimbabwe, we've got a deficit of about 2,500 schools, which is a very big number. And obviously, the fiscus itself cannot sustain that. Therefore, schools are also allowed to retain their fees, because in the past, fees were part of the consolidated revenue, which went to the state and then get redistributed. So in the meantime, schools collect their monies. Again, one other way is that there is tuition, and then there are special levies. Assuming a school would like to buy cars, want to build additional infrastructure, the government approves a certain specific levy that the parents have got to pay. But you can actually see to that the debt itself can still incapacitate most parents to fully pay for the learners. There is always, to some extent, what is called BEAM, Basic Education Assistance Module, which is a safety net for vulnerable children, those with disabilities, those who are poor, those who have left school because of the cost of education. So this BEAM facility as a safety net is very important. But you find that the implementation process of this facility is a bit problematic and bureaucratic. to such an extent that those schools, there are some schools which are so vulnerable, and this whole debt thing is actually following them on their footsteps. Fees are paid, say, in January, February, but at times, this BIM money is paid off in October or November. So you can actually see to that it really affects the operations of the organizations, and efforts are being made currently to make sure that as soon as those who are vulnerable are picked up, they can actually, monies can be transferred to the schools so that they can operate. So in that way, it is one way in which monies or the debt component is done. Then from the central government point of view, our members of parliament are given what we call a devolution fund. A devolution fund means that distribution of resources are now decentralized from the central government to the provinces, to the districts, and to the various areas. It is within this criteria that people identify their needs, and especially if it's the educational needs, it might go towards the building of infrastructure so as to reduce the teacher-pupil ratio, so as also to assist, especially most of our learners who are girls, with the provision of sanitary pads. And even the issue of guidance and counseling, because the scourge of drug and substance abuse, in the past it was said, it's for the poor. But it has been realized through research that even the most affluent ones are engaging, especially if I can remember my brother who was here, doctor who is at a university. The rich and affluent are the ones who are bringing to the poor. So it's a really serious area, and there is serious investment, especially in Zimbabwe, in guidance and counseling. And this guidance and counseling is actually assisting the debt reduction, merely because property and resources will be wasted through that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kujeke. We've heard of a lot of innovative financing models from Zimbabwe, and I'm sure participants will also be able to share some of theirs from their respective countries. One of the benefits of having one panelist is that you have enough time left over for participants to make interventions. So we're that panel today. Let me open it up to the participants. If there are any questions, comments, suggestions, would like to begin hearing them. I see a first hand from Rita. If somebody can take the mic, and then I'll come up to you. Yeah, we'll do a round. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Semkai. Thank you, facilitator. I just want to appreciate the issue of education financing. One area which I hope will become almost like what we call a cross-cutting theme will be out-of-school children. But not only that, informal sector. We have the concept of lifelong learning. My name is Rita from DVV International. I have my colleague here, Matteo, wave over there, DVV International, looking at adult learning and education. My question would be, when it comes to education financing, how can we really integrate community-based adult learning and education? But this is also 15 plus. We're taking youth as well as the adults. So education financing focuses on the school structure, the education structure, which is wonderful, but I feel there is a forgotten cadre that needs to be really looked at. I would like to ask the panelists if Zimbabwe is doing anything in looking at out-of-school financing, out-of-school learning centers, community learning centers, for those who do not actually get the opportunity for basic education. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. There was the hand on my far right. Yep.
My name is Jansa from Zambia. I'm coming from National Action for Quality Education in Zambia. And my concern really is about the quality. Even when the doctor tells us that they are doing fine in terms of literacy, I know that in most countries we are doing badly in terms of literacy. I want to know more from the doctor. How have you made those gains in literacy? Which literacy programs have you put in place? I remember last year I attended the national conference for youths in Zimbabwe. I was very shocked that in Zimbabwe, funding to police service or to security is more than funding to education. And the case is the same in other countries. I don't know who has cased us that we see education as a cost and not as an investment. What do you say about the abrogation of most governments in Africa of so many international, continental, and regional educational binding treaties? For example, the 1997 Protocol on Education, where all governments are offending those protocols with impunity. Where is the problem, Doctor? Thank you.
Thank you. There was a hand in the adjacent table. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Clement Lezio. Chancellor, you've asked a question that I wanted to ask, but I've got a couple of other questions that I need to ask here. The first one, Doc, is you spoke about the 20% investment towards education. And I would want to find from you, Doc, and from the House, how realistic is this? Or we were just running with other people's agenda, because there's 20% that goes towards education. There's 15% that goes towards agriculture. There's 10% that should go towards health, if I'm not mistaken, and that adds up to 45%. And we've got other sectors that really need the budget. So how realistic is this 20%? And considering that most African countries are failing to meet the 20%. The second question is looking at, how can African countries be innovative enough to ensure that education benefit from the endowment of natural resources that we do have? How can we be innovative enough to make sure that, we get funding from the resource that we have? Just last week, I was in an area called Chiazwa in Zimbabwe, where we mine diamonds. And 5 kilometers from the mine itself, there's a school that is so dilapidated. And, this is where the diamonds are mined. How can we be innovative enough? Doc, you also spoke about issues to do with efficiency in the utilization of the budget itself. Despite the fact that the education sector get a little budget or a little money, I'm worried about the efficiency. I can give an example of our ministry in Zimbabwe. We retain quite a lot of money that is unutilized to treasury at the end of the year. How can we improve that efficiency for the little budget that we receive? The last question that I want to ask is concerning the debt issue. Do Africa need to borrow? Do Africa need to borrow? Yet we do have an endowment of natural resources. Why do we borrow?
Thank you. That was a really poignant point on the natural resources. I think the picture that you painted in Zimbabwe with the diamond mines is one that he will also see in many other countries, including Tanzania. The last table over there, far end.
Thank you, moderator.
Don't worry, we'll be moving towards my left, and we'll take as many hands as we can. Continue.
Thank you. My name is Makumba, and I work with Haki Elim. Mine is simple. I believe government should work toward enhancing education to be a free commodity. And I think education and health should progressively be free toward any country. And I understand our country is trying and offering fee-free education from primary level to secondary level. But in terms of implementation and covering the cost, it becomes more difficult because we're talking about the capitation that is going to school being inadequate. I wanted to learn from Zimbabwe. Has the experience been the same? What are you doing in terms of providing or making sure that education becomes a free commodity? Thank you.
Thank you. This side now, seeing a hand there. Yes, sir. If we could get you the mic. Yep.
Yeah, my name is Humphrey Moshi from the University of Dar es Salaam. I've got 4 quick questions. One, we're talking about quality, but what does quality mean? Quality, to me, it means more that the kind of education which is being offered is aligned with the demands of the labor market. Second one, of late, we've seen people put a lot of emphasis on university education. And some of the institutions, which we used to call vocational training, are being turned into universities. That doesn't make sense at all, because an engineer needs 6 artisans. A medical doctor needs 3 nurses. If then those institutions are being turned into universities, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I give you a very simple. Whenever I travel, I have to ensure that I have a needle as well as an extra baton in my bags, so that if I lose a baton, I can do it. Surprisingly, the guys who are finishing the universities nowadays, they have a problem of a baton. They go to Fundicherihan. They have to go to. It doesn't make sense to me at all. Then the structure of the economy has to be aligned with the kind of education you offer. In Africa, 64% of the household are dependent on agriculture. In Tanzania, it's almost the same, it's about 62%. But surprisingly, you don't see agriculture or farming be taught in primary schools. In the 1970s, when I was going to schools, I know how to make compost manure at the primary level. Nowadays, my friend, you don't have such things. It's high time we have to go back.
Thank you.
The last one, we're talking about debts. Borrowing is not a problem. Borrowing becomes a problem when you borrow on non-concessional terms. And of late, because dollars become a scarce resource in the world, then you find that the dollar-denominated debts become a burden. It's high time we have to diversify. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, another hand towards yeah, if a mic can stand up so that the person holding the mic can see you. Thank you.
Hello, Doc. Yeah, I just want to, first of all, associate myself with the comments of everyone in the room. In regard to your presentation, it was well articulated, so thank you so much for that. So I just have one question for you. It's in relation to the GPE commitments and the pledges that countries have made. I would like to pick your brain in terms of what are some of the strategies or approaches that you can propose countries to use in terms of following up on accountability and transparency when it comes to the pledges that countries have made. So what are some of those examples that Zimbabwe has applied, and where do you feel like we should invest in terms of our approaches and our strategies? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kujeke. Those were a handful. I'm sure we'll get the opportunity. Don't worry, we'll get an opportunity for a second round. Let him try and manage these ones first.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was really a mouthful. To Rifa, where is Rifa? Rita, okay, that's fine. True, the constituency of out-of-school learners is well catered for in Zimbabwe. And that is one other route which has actually assisted the country to be possibly where it is. And historically, the school used the out-of-school component as a way of escaping the post-colonial states' commissions of education, where only 50% were supposed to go into formal school system. And the other 50% was relegated in there to do out-of-school learning through the non-formal education programs. And these have helped greatly. And comparisons have actually been made internationally as to whether they were benefiting from that type of education. But today we find that there are quite a number of open and distance learning institutions the world over using the very same model. Zimbabwe had one of the first government open and distance learning center, which is a primary school from ECD up to grade 7. We started in 1930, and it catered mostly for learners who were living in geographically displaced places, and those who even went out of the country and still wanted the curriculum. Again, this non-formal education component played a very pivotal role during the COVID period, especially when the very same team, and fortunately enough I was in that very team, we compressed the syllabus and came up with ODL modules, which, for example, Form 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, we compressed and came up with 3 modules, which are a 1-year program. So assuming someone wants to write examinations at Form 4, you just need 1 year. That is one other area where we try to accommodate those who are out of school. And again, within that very same scenario where the government might not have enough resources, there are independent colleges which have been created. To some extent, they do not follow rigidly the expectations in terms of standards of where, basically in Zimbabwe, we normally talk of space. But these ones can actually be formed anyway. In the past, they used to take adults and other learners, but currently they are taking learners from 13 years up to 19. And we've actually been writing concept notes so much that they no longer are supposed to be called non-formal education. They should be either lifelong education. And within that context, someone asked about functional literacy. I think I can bundle that one. Functional literacy is most prevalent in most of our out-of-school programs, where we normally have community-based education. People are given various skills. One other literacy which has been missing is the financial literacy. People go out of the country, they come to Tanzania, they order their dresses, they come back to Zimbabwe, Malawi, or Mozambique, they just make a 5% profit. They don't consider the night they were away. They don't consider the food that they ate in terms of the budget. So that financial literacy is also very, very important. People are engaged in various projects like beekeeping, fisheries, piggery, and so on and so forth. All what is required is acknowledgement rather than to have bad perception of people who use their hands. And finally, to Rita, I would also like to say that in Zimbabwe, these independent colleges and private schools have accommodated most of our out-of-school learners. And within that very same component, we have got the Teach for Zimbabwe, the Kuenda project, which has played a very big and pivotal role in transforming our rural marginalized communities by engaging and putting competent and qualified teachers who are actually transforming the communities through skills, through community engagement. So these are normally what they call their fellows. They've been doing quite well, and through those collaborations, they've actually managed to source technology which is actually being used in some of these areas, and it has actually improved even the chiefs. What do you call a chief here? Just call him chief. Mambo. Boa. Right. So those people are very, very much excited. Clap hands for Kuyenda in Zimbabwe. Right. In fact, Janita asked about quality education. Definitely, the governments of Africa, he probably might actually be doing an injustice, because this one I can actually double it with the one we say, how do we borrow and why do we borrow? It seems we borrow for consumption, not for development. And as a result, you would now find that our development partners, issues which were presented by the doctor, I don't know whether he's here today, he made a very, very beautiful presentation yesterday that we have got perceptions that educational partners and stakeholders, they come to impose their things on us. But it is us. I'm also trying to answer a question of possibly how we can recover. That is, we need to have our ministerial operation plans, which go down to either provincial operation plans, and these come from the educational strategic plans, which identify specific areas which each ministry or the education needs to be developed. And in order for developmental partners to survive, they come in and identify specific areas where they participate. And in their participation level, there was also some question on transparency and accountability. I would like to believe that these days it's a bit easy, because most of these educational partners are actually dividing their finances, one which goes directly to service providers, and possibly one which goes to consumption like T&S. You cannot, in quotes, steal for your people. But those for hotels and so on and so forth, they're paying that. That's one way of trying to look for accountability and transparency. Various evidence is also supposed to be part of it in terms of registers, in terms of any acquittals which are supposed to be made for the monies invested. And I would like to borrow from my dear brother who presented it yesterday, that definitely there should be reports to find out that the cost of input, is it in tandem with the output, let alone with the outcome? And in terms of outcome, we are saying, has there been an improvement? Has there been a magnitude of shift in terms of where we were, where we want to go? Because if possibly I'm a medical doctor, most probably if my colleague was going to ask me what very interested you in your lifetime is, I ran away from old women and men the first time I graduated with my PhD. They made a small queue. I've got a headache, I've got a backache, I've got a leg. And it was very difficult to explain to them that I'm a philosophical doctor. Right. Innovation. The levels of innovation, you can actually find that in Africa, most schools are going towards the competence-based curriculum. The major idea here is trying to give some certain levels of competencies. I would like to believe that there were some certain colonial programs which gave some certain pathway to people. You go for agriculture, you go for woodwork, you go for food technology. When we assumed our independence, we were so much frustrated by that type of educational system. Had we just changed and rebranded the names so that the very same skills that we would like to find in the streets, like what my colleague has actually answered, are transformed and found from a school system. We ended up become more of content people rather than of the practical reality. And we mastered with all the enthusiasm our colonial masters, which is very good. And what then would I say? How to do it? Governments can become a little bit difficult. I think you had the ex-president here saying that people would come, try to ask for this, and it will never be done. Governments never, or at most, don't accept researches. But if researches are done by stakeholders and partners, well, there are certain statistics which are acceptable, but they will have accepted. So in other words, what am I saying? We are saying to our various educational partners, please champion in the way in which you can persuade through advocacy, through awareness to our various governments. I think I've...
yeah. Yeah.
Did I leave someone?
No, not really. But there's two more last questions or comments. Okay, we'll see if you have ample time. Maybe one of you volunteer to drop your question. Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, I'm looking at my watch. Well, it says we've got 5 more minutes. Can you just don't cut on my time, Ray? All right. The mic to that table, please.
Thank you. My name is Yamurai from Teach for Zimbabwe, part of Kuyenda. And I just wanted, maybe these are not questions, Doc, but just to buttress what Clemens has said. In terms of the debt cycle, I think we are never going to be able to get out of it if we also do not call for transparency in terms of the spending that governments do. So the public finance management system needs to be very transparent, because I think we borrow for certain, say, infrastructure, but the amount of money that we spend per kilometer of a road compared to other states can be so phenomenal that you begin to wonder what is happening with the procurement system. And I think in terms of what Clemens said, I always wonder, we have minerals, but are they nationalized? Because I feel that, Implants is coming in with private investment, so it's now their investment. The dividend goes to them. In Zimbabwe, we used to have community ownership trusts where the mining houses were forced to give at least 10% to the community that they are mining from, and in that way, it would then bring back investment into the community, in schools, in hospitals, roads, and all that. But now it's no longer mandatory. So it means that whatever is coming out of the minerals is private investment, is private equity. So
tena waiteni paparazi warushe kwa mitandao, siataki mapenzi, nataka jipongeza. Naimwita yo baby, kumbe naye na baby. Oh, ulimuna kipenzi, ni mshenza kupendi, ama kweli mtihani, mambo mengi dunia na mistressi siwezi. Oh, siwezi.
So tutajitahidi sana kwenda haraka so that your lunch will be served at least. Okay. Someone forgot his phone, probably from the, oh.
Someone gave me his phone for the summit point.
You have to see the MC here to get your phone. Thank you. So my name is Makumba Mwemezi, and I work with Hakelim as a program manager in the Department of Research, Innovation, and Policy Analysis, and I'll be moderating this session on addressing early marriage and teen pregnancies. This is a sensitive area and topic. I hope we will all join in terms of discussing and sharing experiences. We know it's a challenge that is across Africa, and in the room we are all representing our countries, and I think we share some of the experiences.
looking forward to hear from you. But I'll be joined with the following panelists. We have Ms. Lydia Wilbert, Executive Director, Learning and Engagement from Comfort. Please welcome and join me here. But I also have Gema Todd, Education Specialist from the World Bank. You're here. A round of applause, please. Karibu sana. And Mr. Majidi Mjengwa, Executive Director, KTO. Karibu Tanzania. Mr. Majidi Mjengwa, are you in the room? He's not. Oh. Have a good team. We can continue with that. But also Clemens Nihilizio. I hope I've pronounced you well, your name, last name. Program Manager, Zimbabwe Education Coalition. Kindly join. Karibu sana, Clemens. Oh yeah, in the middle. In the middle. So we are told that we have less than an hour to do justice to this topic, and without wasting more time, I hope everybody has a mic, and I'll quickly, probably when you get a time to speak, you start by introducing yourself, and say a little bit about yourself, then continue to the topic. I have questions like usual, a lot of them, but I'll be asking them randomly. And probably before I begin, I would like to throw a general question on the topic. Addressing early marriages and teen pregnancies, implementing measures to prevent early marriages and teen pregnancies to reduce school dropout rates for girls. My question is, can you paint a picture on how bad is teen marriages and early pregnancies across Africa? Take an experience of any country that you are confident with. Dada, karibu.
Do you want to start with me?
Yes, of course, Lydia.
Naitwa Lydia Wilbert. I work with Comfort. Comfort is Campaign for Female Education, and we are into girls' education, creating opportunities for girls, especially those from the marginalized community. Our vision is a world in which every child is educated, protected, respected, and valued, and grows up to turn the tide of poverty. Please underline the word every child, because sometimes people mistaken us with exclusion of boys. We invest in girls' education because we know that is the most appropriate strategy to tackling inequality, and through which every child can be reached really. All the boys and girls are born from their mothers, and evidence shows that if you are born from an educated mother, your likelihood of acquiring higher education is increased, whether you are a boy or a girl. So the topic around teenage pregnancy is really pertinent for us as an organization, but I know it's a priority for the country. And that's why we are all here, and that's why we are having this in the program. Because I think maybe we are talking about inclusion here. As we talk about third industrial revolution, right? And we talk about technology. Where are we even beginning to talk about those girls who get pregnant and get out of the school system because people made them pregnant? So the pregnant makers, they just decide that they are just going to take advantage of the poverty, the innocence, the youngness, everything, and make them pregnant. So I am not going to give a bigger picture in terms of statistics. I'm a person of basics. But my understanding is that in Tanzania, at least, pregnancy is the second reason for dropout from the last best,
Definitely.
right? Yeah, so it stands as 5.5%, if I am correct. So if it is just the second reason for dropout, then this is a serious problem. Because the first reason is dropout, is truance. And probably within truance, there is also a hidden number of pregnancies that we are not able to capture. So I'll give opportunity to others to paint the picture. Thank you.
Please pass the mic to Nihilizia. Karibu.
Passing the mic to the pregnant maker.
Yeah.
I'm only the pregnant maker here. But not to school children, right? Not to underage girls. My name is Clement Lizio. I come from the Education Coalition of Zimbabwe, of course, in Zimbabwe. And you asked us to give a picture of girls' pregnancy. We are working together with the World Vision on a project. We are working on a project called Adolescent Mothers Education Initiative together with the World Vision Zimbabwe, World Vision UK, World Vision DRC, and Connect. We are working in Rwanda, DRC, and Zimbabwe. And 20 to 25% of the dropouts in these countries is due to early pregnancies and teenage pregnancy, early marriages and teenage pregnancy. That is the picture that we are getting in these countries that we are working. So if it's 20 to 25%, it's quite bad. It's quite bad. So that is the picture for now.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So my name is Gemma John Nifasha Todd. I'm an education specialist at the World Bank. So I'm employed by the World Bank, but actually many of my employers are here in the room. We have the students, the teachers, and the government. So, to answer your question, I think already Madam Lydia and Clemens have explained that the problem is big. Maybe one thing that I can add is it's big, yes, and I'll give some data in the context of our country, Tanzania, but it has gotten better. I think, for example, if you look at the DHS data, teenage pregnancy, for example, has gone down from about 27% to 22%. But I think we can all agree that number is still too high. 22% of children, of teens are still at risk and are still experiencing teenage pregnancy. On the side of early marriage as well, this has gone down. In Tanzania, we know from our latest data, it's about 10%. Experiencing early marriage. But I think one thing as well to say, it's still a big problem, but the problem varies across our country. We know that there are areas of high risk. For example, if you're talking about early marriage, rural areas are more at high risk. And if you're talking about teenage pregnancy, actually urban areas are more at risk. So just to agree with my fellows, it's a big problem. The positive is getting better, but it's still a big problem.
Thank you very much. If we could also continue with you. You are painted on the statistics, 25% to 22% is still high. I know in the education sector, around 1,000 student primary schools drop every year because of pregnancy, and the secondary schools are 5,000 every year, an average of that. That's still a big number, because if you count heads in this room, you'll know better how 1,000 or 5,000 is still high. And what are the factors that contribute to that pregnancies and all that? We have discussed all that, but can you tell us the factors and the reasons why it's increasing?
It's a good question. So I think on this one, there are so many factors, we can all agree. And it depends in some ways on where you look at. I think one of the key factors that gets recognized a lot is poverty. We know, for example, even how
Madam Lydia was explaining, it's very easy for our girls to maybe get even confused or to get tricked because of poverty, because they're not able to make such decisions due to the poverty. So that's maybe reason number one. We also have the more cultural side, the cultural schools. So for example, in Tanzania, we have areas where early child marriage, teenage pregnancy is more common because of different cultural factors and rituals that we have within those areas. However, we also have different other schools. For example, the legal side, if you speak to lawyers, for example, they would say it's because actually our legal framework is not protecting our girls. So even, for example, many of us know in here, until today, our law of marriage, for example, has not been changed. So we have conflicting laws, the law of the child, which is supposed to protect the child, and then the law of marriage. So multiple factors, but I think as well, if you look on the side of education, I think a lot of the research shows us and tells us if you ensure access to education, you can delay teenage pregnancy, you can delay early child marriage. And I think we have to ask ourselves, are we doing justice to that? Are we providing the right type of education, the quality type of education that will make sure we delay these processes? And I don't think we are there yet. We are moving there, but we are not there. So maybe I can just...
Thank you. I hope the reasons are shared within the room. We'll get to hear from also participants. But thank you, Todd. But Clemens, you have heard of the laws being mentioned, and earlier on, Madam Lydia talked about being a priority. And we know there are laws and regulations. For example, in Tanzania, we have, the recent re-entry guideline, which allows at least those girls who have dropped out of school to go back to school, sure that the dropout doesn't bring much effect as it is now doing. You can share the experience where you're from, but I hope the laws are also there. But can you explain the functionality of those laws and regulations which are there?
Thank you so much. You mentioned that the laws are available. That is not our problem in Africa. Our tragedy is having very good policies that are poorly implemented. Because, for example, I can give you spoke of Tanzania, there are the guidelines for re-entry. If you go to Zambia, there are those guidelines for re-entry. If you go to Malawi, the guidelines for re-entry are there. If you come to Zimbabwe, the guidelines are there as well. In Zimbabwe, actually, the Education Act is amended in 2020, actually prohibit, the discrimination of girls from going back to school. If you go further, the Marriage Act that was, promulgated in 2022 actually, criminalizes the marriage of young children. You go further, the regulations, the general regulation on education actually criminalize all those things. But that is on paper. It's not being, practiced. We've got very, very good policies that are then poorly implemented. That is the challenge that is there. And the challenge is emanating from, the discussion that we were having earlier in terms of, the schools, education sector, well regulated, but we do not have the financing mechanism to make sure that the policies are, fully implemented. That is challenge number one, the financing mechanism. And challenge number two for us in terms of the policies is the attitude of the teachers itself, the attitude of the communities, and sometimes the attitude of the girls and the attitude of the other learners. For example, communities might say, if a girl falls pregnant, then why should I send back, someone who is ready to be a mother to school? And even at school, even if the policy says a girl is allowed to come back to school, you hear a teacher complain that I cannot handle a pregnant girl. If a pregnant girl belongs to clinics, I can't handle it in a school. And they stigmatize the girls. So that is the challenge. Policies are there, very clear, but we've got such challenges of implementation.
Thank you. I would like to go back to Ms. Gema. you've heard of the point raised by Clemens on financing these efforts. And I have a question for you. In terms of the African country, how effective are they in terms of allocating resources to the education budget, addressing this agenda?
So it's a good question. I think even thinking about the last panel discussion, the discussion of financing, we're not investing enough. I believe yesterday you were discussing about the GPE allocation of 20%. We know in our own context we're not achieving that. I think previously we're 18.6 and it's gone down even further. But also when you look at, for example, we conducted a public expenditure review in Zanzibar, looking at spending to education sector. And when you look at adequacy, efficiency, and equity, we're not doing justice. So I think it's very important, one, on the side of financing, we need to ask ourselves, is the overall financing enough? It's not. But then with the resources we have, are they efficiently used? Are they equitably used? And I think we continue with that discussion. So I think on the side of efficiency, the fact that we have so many children dropping out, it shows that we're not using our financing efficiently. It shows that we're not addressing those core challenges that children are facing. I think also, for example, in the context of Tanzania, we've been doing a lot of work with the government to support early identification of children who are at risk of dropping out. And for example, together with the Ministry of Education and PURAG, we are supporting the implementation of what's called a Safe School program. That includes many interventions, such as guidance and counseling, teachers being made available at schools, such as, for example, life skills clubs being made available, but also a system which will allow teachers and school managers, heads of school, to identify children who are at risk of dropping out. I think one thing that, with regards to financing as well, that we need to look at is how much are we spending per student. Again, it's not adequate enough. For example, in the context of Tanzania, about 151,000 is being spent per child. So there's many factors that we need to think about. Is a child incentivized, for example, to continue going to school, to continue learning? For example, at the World Bank, we use a framework which has 5 pillars. So for example, the first one is the student motivated and prepared to learn? The second one is looking at teachers. Is the teacher there and available, effective? Third one is looking at allocation of resources, and this is teaching and learning resources. Number 4 is, are schools safe? And number 5 is, are schools well managed? And of course, we have cross-cutting issues such as technology, for example, the role of the parents, the home learning environment, and many other factors that feed across these 5 different pillars. But I think when we go back to the question of, are we using our financing efficiently, the fact that we have dropouts, about 5,000 girls dropping out in secondary school due to pregnancy. As Madam Lydia said, that's not the main reason. Truancy actually is the main reason, but we know if a child is irregular, the risks of early child marriage or teen pregnancy also go up. Yes, so I think we're not investing enough per child to incentivize a child to attend school regularly and to see the joys of learning, but also as a nation as well, we're not reaching the allocations that we've set.
No, thank you very much. Madam Lydia, the laws are there, are not working. But I know from comfort perspective, CSO perspective, a lot of initiatives are being done to support, at least eradicate teen pregnancies, early marriages, support programs, empowerment programs. From your perspective, has these initiatives and programs been adequate enough? Are they even helping? Or should we close the shop and go home? Karim.
Asante sana, and no, we are not closing the shop. The children are looking at us. And like everyone said, it's one step to have laws and regulations and guidelines. But it takes intentionality, if that is the correct English. Intentionality to follow up to the girls who are still remaining out of the system, even with all the laws and regulations that we put in place. So the girls who are getting pregnant while they're in school, we know their background, right? It will not be the children of the people who are seated here. You know that? Yeah. So maybe we are talking about teenage pregnancy, girls' pregnancy in a platform where it's not the best. Next time, let's go and meet them there, where they are. Why are we holding a meeting here about teenage pregnancy? See, we go in some of the areas where we know that it's rampant. We will meet them and we will understand. We don't have to summarize the reasons. We will see them. And I think it's clear what needs to be done. We are just not bold enough to invest enough. Because it's a web. You can't tackle one issue and address all of them. We need to collaborate and make sure that we are intentional at addressing both. So for example, with the re-entry, we know that now the guideline allows in Tanzania for the girls to come back. But if you go and interview those who have managed to come back, look at the challenges they are facing. And some who would wish to come, but they can't come because of the challenges. The schools need them to be in uniforms. They need them to be having counter books and even a specific size and whatever. They need them to provide food. They need them to do this and this. So, who is providing those things? We understand that our education policy, for example, in Tanzania, provides for the responsibility in the policy of the parents to take care of those other items apart from the fee free. But do we know how many percentage of the children in the education system who do not have parents? Who takes that responsibility? If it's food, for example. So if someone have food and they offer to these children and they get them pregnant, how are we addressing that challenge? It's not even, allocation. It's not even the capitation increase. It's not even building the school. It's about addressing the hunger at home and at the school for this child. And unfortunately, there are people who offer food and get children pregnant. So what we are not talking about, for me, I think, is the statistics of the people who get children pregnant. So what is their profiles? Are they older people, peer, young? So that we can be targeted. I think we need a mechanism that is very targeted to the issues. Yes, we have made a lot of effort through the government and our partnership with government to be able to address that challenges. But I think our experience as an organization has come for 17 years of existence in Tanzania and 30 years globally, is that what will work is the targeted mechanism. Every child has different circumstances. Unless we are investing in understanding the circumstances of each and every child, general mechanism is not working. But overall, what we have addressed through Comfort is financial support, like financial assistance. So through the government is already providing fee-free, right? So they don't need to pay school fees, they don't need to pay exam fees and everything. But they still need counter books, they still need uniform, they still need food, they still need sanitary pads, they still need ABCs. So we do that for them, for the children who do not have parents, or parents who are unable to do that. In addition to financial support, what we have noted also is the social support. You see, some of us did not study poverty. We actually lived it. So you see, when you are poor, even your thinking is poor. Even the people that are around you, they call it culture. But you know, it's something that is related to poverty. You see? So you need the social support, someone who will be present to give you examples, to encourage you, to believe in you, to give an ear so that you can say everything that is troubling you. And this person should not be available once, should be in your life. So the mentorship program is something that will work, that we have seen working in terms of addressing social support. So we are partnering with the government schools to train girls who finish school in their communities and we train them with life skills, and we give them tools to come back to the system so that they can walk the journey with the girls who are vulnerable and not having anyone to talk to. So they will be available in the school system, but when they go back also they will know is a sister who is in my village. So that one has worked for us, and we are now working with the government to see how this model can actually go beyond 493 secondary schools that we are partnering with, 2 across the country and probably in some other countries in Africa.
But still, it's not adequate enough. Thank you. Clemens, I said it earlier that this is a sensitive topic and you can see how it's growing up to be. And Madam Lydia pointed on, it's clear on what need to be done, but somewhat it's not being done, or rather done in its own ways. We would like to learn from Zimbabwe. What are the mechanisms that Zimbabwe put in place to monitor the effectiveness of, reduced early marriages and teen pregnancies in relation to school dropout?
Thank you, but probably before I get there, I was actually challenged to say we always want to collect statistics of how many girls have gotten pregnant, and we have never profiled the pregnant makers. And belonging to the pregnant maker, club, let me appeal to members of the club that please let's not get children pregnant. Please, I'm appealing to those who are here and those who are outside. I was touched because we focus much on how many girls have fallen pregnant. We have never profiled those that are actually, making girls pregnant. Coming to your question, in Zimbabwe, like I said earlier on, to say in terms of policy, we are number 1 in Africa. Zimbabwe has actually, recently developed an early warning system against, the dropout of girls from secondary schools. And the early warning system is premised on having, the community, having the schools, having educational authorities, and having, stakeholders working together to make sure that we reduce the issues of, dropouts through an early warning system, which is premised on a theory of change, which says if schools can identify, detect risk factors that contribute to girls' disengagement, and eventual dropout, and systematically profile girls, then provide in-school support to address or mitigate those risks, create synergies with communities and parents and CSOs to refer girls for legal, social, economic, and health support. Then girls' chances of staying in school, completing school, will improve, and a more supportive and girl-friendly school environment created, consequently contributing to the country's educational development. So it is premised on, first of all, identifying and detecting the risk factors that leads, to girls dropping out of school, and then create a support system that will then make sure that the girls continue to, to stay in school. And I would want to explain further on the identification part, which is measured in terms of, looking at the attendance. If a girl fails to attend school for 5 consecutive days, then it becomes a red flag, and the school authorities need to really investigate and see what is happening. And also, it needs to look at the behavior of the girl itself to say, is she distracted in school? Is she aggressive? Is she isolated? Then the school authorities then need to, to investigate and see what is happening to that particular girl. And also look at the background. Lydia here spoke about, is she coming from a poor background? And profiling girls from that, looking at, is she coming from a poor background? Is she coming from a child-headed household? Is she orphaned? Is she a girl with a disability? Profiling all that information can actually, help in detecting, dropout. Then from there, it goes on to stage 2, where you then track and monitor the girl. You've profiled and seen that the girl has not attended the school. Then using a whole community approach, where the community is involved, where CSOs are involved, where school authority is involved, you then track the girl and see what is happening with the girl. You also engage the parents, you also engage the community. Then the third stage that is provided by the early warning system is community engagement. Once you've found this, then you engage the community to say, someone has said it takes a community to raise a kid. So you then involve the whole community and say, in providing support, actually it calls for what they call community school support committees that then support, the girls and make sure that they, go back to school. And the last stage is a case management. If there is a case that needs to be managed, then the school authorities will then take up. So that is the mechanism that is there. On paper, but it is.
That was a question.
Yeah,
on paper.
Yeah.
And how is it working?
Yeah, in terms of working, some schools are really trying, depending on the attitude of the teachers, depending on the attitude of these communities towards these, early pregnancies, early marriages. In some areas it is working. In some areas we have seen, communities actually following up to girls who had fallen pregnant and given birth, and actually, volunteering to take care of the baby whilst the mother is back in school. We have seen that working. We have also seen some schools introducing what they call breastfeeding breaks, where the girls who had fallen pregnant would actually be given breaks to go and breastfeed their kids. So in other areas, it is working. But again, because of challenges of resources and the attitudes, we still have a long way in making sure that it works well.
Thank you very much. I know the audience looking forward to questions and contribution. I'll just ask one more question, which I will need every discussant here to answer, and then we'll go back to the audience. And I'll start with Gema. Before the laws, before the support, Madam Lydia, that we are giving these teen mothers and girls who have encountered this, unfortunate of getting pregnant in tender ages, if we are to create or craft one or two takeaway from this room, what need to be done to do away with the teen pregnancies and early marriages in Africa? What need to be done? Exactly. We'll start with you, just a minute, and then to Clemens and Madam Lydia.
Okay, thank you, sorry. What needs to be done? I actually think we know a lot about the pregnators. I think we have a lot of research, at least in Tanzania, that shows who are the perpetrators of violence. And at the local level, we have systems in place that help us know, for example, what are the reasons if a child gets pregnant, if a girl child gets pregnant, who it is and why that happened. I think we have that information already. I think what I would say as a key takeaway, it really is a cross-sectoral problem. It's a problem, as we talked about poverty, we talked about culture, we're talking about parents, we're talking about what's happening in schools. It's a challenge that needs a multi-sectoral approach. Maybe that can be my first point. If we really want to be serious about ending teenage pregnancy and early child marriage. In the context of schools, I really think that we need to change how we see schools and the roles that schools can have for our children. Already we know a lot about the science of learning. We know a lot of evidence about what a safe or a good school looks like. But as the panelists have discussed, we're not implementing that yet. I think we need to have a focus on transforming our schools, making sure that every child attends regularly, every child has access and access to quality education, has good learning outcomes, and so forth. So I think probably my two takeaways would be it's a multi-sectoral and focus.
That's quite heavy. Clemens?
Thank you so much. For me, it's going to be simple.
Yeah, you have a half a minute.
We have focused much on the victim.
Okay.
It's better now to focus on the perpetrator.
Oh, thank you. Madam Leader.
All of the above. And in addition to that, just a collaboration. She said multi-sectoral.
Yeah,
so let's collaborate because we know what is needed to be able to address a web, not just one thing.
Do you think you are not collaborating enough?
Not enough intentionally.
Okay. And let's leave it to the audience. Are we collaborating enough? And already see some hands. I see a lady's hand there. Please, a person with the, a lot of, okay. Now I'll need help, but probably I should stand and see. I'll take 3 hands here and 3 hands at this side. We start with the beautiful, yes, tada, and then to the table that has a student and to the hand on my right hand. Yes, you can start. And then I'll pick around from this again. Please take a mic. And please, if you have a question, make sure you address it to a specific person whom you would like to answer. Or rather, if it's a general question, then you should say so.
Okay, so for me, I would like to just reiterate what the representative of impregnators said. I think one of the, and also what the first speaker said about having mechanisms for protection. One of the tools, I think, it's symbolic in that we are actually within the 16 days against gender-based violence. One of the tools that we thought would work within the movement was making the sexual offenders register public. And there has been such backlash around that. And it's also proving to be ineffective in that the judicial system is not supporting the implementation and the follow-up of that particular mechanism. And that register must be made public. And the ministries of education should have direct access to that. Thanks.
Thank you. I didn't mention that you have only 1 minute to each of the person who is asking a question, so that we can take more hands. Please go and then take a mic to that table. Have a gentleman there with the white T-shirt, and then we'll take 3 hands from here, then we'll come to another round. Karibu.
My name is Emmanuel Kabula, Lulo Youth Collective.
So you have half a minute.
From Tanzania. We all know that in Lulo and mining areas, we have the problem of sexual and gender-based violence, including rape, early marriage, and forced marriage. Now you said that we have laws. Now, what is the problem with the implementation of these laws in those areas? Because we cannot be talking about the enactment or establishment of these laws, why the problems are still there in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope it's addressed to Clemens, that question, I don't know. Or anyone who can answer. Please.
Thank you so much, moderator. I am Charles Nyukuri, Plan International Regional Advisor. My question goes to the World Bank representative. So 2 weeks ago, the East Africa Legislative Assembly met in Rwanda, where they were discussing the sexual reproductive bill. I've not said rights. That's a bill that has been revised over and over from 2019 to date. It has not been passed. And it speaks to the things that we are discussing here about protecting girls and young women in school. So the importance of this bill will be, resources will be allocated to countries. Countries will be forced to report on the progress they are making in terms of ensuring girls are still in school. So the question is, what is World Bank doing in terms of asking these legislative members the question? Because it's a conversation that has been there since 2019, but you are not making progress. And last week, Somalia has joined the East Africa community, which makes it a little bit more tricky. So it's World Bank asking the Legislative Assembly questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Let me take the three hands, have to this table, one person, and that one, and that one. Oh, we should take a lady there. So you should, between Mabala and the cogs, you should choose one. Okay, a lady. Please, let me have the mics to that table also. Let's start with that one. Yes. And then there and there. No, I've chosen a lady there to present.
Thank you to all the panelists. They've really spoken to the issues. Just to
you can use this.
Just to elaborate on the importance of multi-sectoral collaboration. And when you talk about collaboration, it's interministerial, because I think we are looking at collaboration between partners and development partners, but we are neglecting the collaboration that is intersectoral and interministerial. My second issue is on the political will. I think for as long as we do not make issues of children and issues of teenage pregnancies a political issue that is politically risky to not to invest in stopping it, then it's not going to make headway. I know a lot of countries in Africa have made commitments to prevent violence against children and end it, and teenage pregnancy is one of them. Tanzania was the first country in Africa to commit to that, and after that was Uganda, we have Kenya, we have Ethiopia, we have Nigeria, we have South Africa, we have Zimbabwe, we have Zambia, Namibia, Guinea. All those countries have made those political commitments, but we need to translate those political intentions to action.
Thank you. Good.
Good afternoon.
Half a minute. Good.
Okay, I'll be quick. Sibabazon Dlamele from Lesotho. My point goes to, I think, everybody, but what programs are being directed to both genders? Because we keep on talking about the girl, but for anything to happen, to empower a girl, you still need to empower a boy to understand why they need not to be a perpetrator. For a girl to understand why they're being perpetrated, there needs to be that conversation. So what programs are we doing or are there to encompass both genders so that we are not sitting here and having these conversations? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hassan, quick one.
Thank you.
We're out of
I'll go
time.
straight to the question. To what extent are we involving the children themselves to deal with the issue? We are now here, adults discussing, but the children are in the room. What do we think about that?
Quite a number of questions, and probably we should start with the World Bank. You have a couple of questions that concerns you. If I have mic here, yes, and then we'll go this way. And choose any question above what was directed specifically to you.
Okay, some excellent questions, some very difficult questions. I'll try to respond. I think first for my brother from Plan International on the SRH, Sexual Reproductive Health Bill, it's actually something that I haven't followed so closely. But what I can say is at the World Bank, earlier this year we were conducting some analysis looking at adolescent and youth well-being. And this involved 3 different studies, one looking at basic education and how we need to strengthen that system, another looking at TVET and how we need to make that more dynamic, similar to the discussion this morning, and the last one looking at trends in adolescent and youth well-being. Within that, we were looking at different parts of well-being, one of them being sexual and reproductive health rights. And of course, we see from that analysis that lack of access to sexual and reproductive health resources is very much linked to where teenage pregnancies are found. And we have examples that we report in the report, for example, Katavi and Rukwa. So I think the point that you're asking is a very valid one. I think we need to figure out how to, again, engage Ministry of Health together with Ministry of Education to make sure that such resources are available at the school level. And I want to link this maybe to another question that was asked about, what programs are there, for example, engaging both boys and girls, and
you have 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay,
Yeah.
very quickly. So there is the Safe School program that I mentioned that is engaging both boys and girls. It's talking about life skills. It's talking about guidance and counseling, reducing dropout, etc. And we found that this is vital. And one other thing with regards to the Safe School program, we're engaging children. Children are actually the ones at the school level who are creating the messages to the community about what it means to be safe. So we have very many examples about, cartoons that are being drawn by the children, so children are actually being engaged within this approach. So there are very many examples.
Thank you. Clemens?
Thank you so much. I think I can answer the question from that brother, which my dear sister there has already answered, to say, why are we not implementing? It's merely lack of political will, from implementing these policies. Once we correct our politics, then we are able to tackle these issues. And another issue is that our policies are all buried in legal jargon that is not understood by those that should be actually be implementing the policies. So once we simplify our policies and disseminate our policies very well, then I think we can be able to tackle such challenges.
Thank you, Madam Leader. And I hope we still have time. Oh.
Why the policies are not implemented? I think the implementers of the policies, their children are not getting pregnant. That's for me. And around the programs, the program actually I mentioned, the life skills and mentorship program that we're implementing with government through secondary school in Tanzania and other countries, Zimbabwe and Zambia. They target both boys and girls in a classroom. And the main thing with boys and girls, these children are very genuine, are young, they are okay, they interact. We want to raise their powers, help them identify their powers to coexist and complement each other rather than competing, right? So this program is really helping both boys and girls at the school level with the mentorship from their sisters to be able to go through and live the life that is better for them. So yes, it's important we raise our boys to be able to understand the roles and the power they have to control themselves and to live, a better attitude. But then the issue is with the men who are also part of the perpetrators. And unfortunately, the statistics shows that the people who are closer to the children, the people who are entrusted with the responsibility to raise them, to protect them, sometimes they become perpetrators. Yeah. So it's important that we know that it's not about telling boys don't impregnate girls. It's about the people who actually present themselves as protectors and then turn around and violate that. Yeah. So that profiling of those people, when we know exactly what they have in their mind and the issues they struggle with, then probably we can also advance or improve, strengthen the programming so that you can be targeted.
Thank you. Thinking of a way to use the 2 minutes that I've left on my own ways. And thank you, panelists. Teen pregnancies and early marriage is a complex topic. We cannot have all the answers here. I know you're living in the society that experience is shared. Now, I'll take 2 hands to those who do not ask questions but have something to contribute for a minute each, and a student. I just want to hear a voice from a student. Just, I have 2 minutes. So, is there any student who wants to speak? Anything? Mwanafunzi yeyote aliyekuwa anafuatilia mjadala huu? Yes, kuna mwanafunzi yeyote mwenye mchango aliyekuwa anafuatilia mjadala huu? Karibu, nimemwona pale. Yes, thank you. I know they were. kwa lugha yoyote unaweza.
Asante. Kwa
Yeah.
majina naitwa Rahma Jumapili. Tumeona kuna sababu ambazo zinapelekea kupata mimba za utotoni. Hivyo basi nina mapendekezo.
Good.
Financial support. Hii itasaidia kuondosha umaskini ambao unapelekea wanafunzi wengi au mtoto wa kike kujiingiza katika vishawishi. Nyingine ni government should regulate laws. Sheria hizo zitasaidia mtoto wa kike kuendelea na masomo ambapo itasaidia kufikia malengo yake. Mfano wa laws ni mfano ule ambao wale wanaowapa makers pregnancy, yani wale wanayesababisha ujauzito wakamatwe na wasichekewe, yani wale ni kifungo.
Okay.
Watu wache tufikie malengo yetu. Girls should be strong, standing and self-confidence. Hii ni kama sisi wenyewe. Msichana yoyote unatakiwa kuwa na uwezo wa kujiamini. Kisha kuwa na uwezo wa kujiamini, utaweza kusimamia misimamo yako. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. She's sending a very strong message around perpetrators. You should leave them, the girls, to thrive and reach their potentials. But she's talking also about financial support and also amendment of laws and strict implementation of those laws, so to say. She has spoken a lot about the perpetrators, Clemens. So she's of the opinion that strict measures should be taken against them. Thank you very much. And this is the end of our session. I would like to end here and take back to the Mr. MC. Asante sana. And
a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. It was a very powerful session. I attempted not to interrupt it. Now, my friend, there are two men. You do not stand in the middle anymore. Please move to the other side. Yes, like that. Yes, like that. Protocol has it that women stay in the middle when you take a picture. So we're going to go for lunch. When you walk out where they're distributing the coupons, the badges, is where you kindly collect your coupon, okay? Don't go for lunch without your coupon. Collect your coupon there. After lunch, you do not come back into this room. You go straight into the breakaway rooms. Only those coming into this room are the ones who are going to be discussing radical inclusion. Is to teach children in the language they understand. If you want to discuss this topic, then at 3 o'clock, let us reconvene in here and discuss this topic. For those wishing to discuss engaging youth in education systems strengthening, you will convene at Kivukoni number 4. Okay? So those discussing engaging youth, Kivukoni 4. Those discussing language will reconvene here. This session starts at 3 up to 4. 4 o'clock, you will all come back here for the final panel discussion and the wrap-up for day 2. Without further ado, once again, collect your lunch coupon where there are 3 ladies seated giving IDs. Enjoy your lunch. Lunch break is for 1 hour. Thank you so much. DJ?